start studying from today is the essence of the Bhagavad Gita. And if I were a student, which I am, of the Bhagavad Gita, I am a student of the Bhagavad Gita, I would not miss these verses for anything in the world. Anything. Whether it is my marriage or my death, even my death, I will come and listen to it. Because this is the sar, this is the essence, and we will go through the verses, of course not all of them today, hopefully we'll do more than one verse today. But you will see how important these verses are for anyone who is, let's start from wanting moksha, or wanting to study the Bhagavad Gita for the sake of knowledge, or someone who just wants to improve their life, getting rid of their dukhs, getting rid of their, problems which everyone in sansar has, or just out of curiosity. These verses are going to help each and everyone. And for those who are here in the young generation, you will build your life on this knowledge. This is the essence of having a successful life, whether it is success in spirituality, or whether it is success in your business later when you start working, or whether it is success in your family life, and even success in your studies. This is the core of all knowledge, mother of all knowledge, father, mother, and entire clan also. As you know, Sanatan Dharma, all the Shastras are based on one format, which is a question-answer format. A Shishya asks a question, and based on that question, a Guru replies. Every Upanishad is based on this format, question and answer. The question should be asked directly to the Guru. Okay, today in our media-friendly generation, questions are asked on WhatsApp, questions are asked on SMS, questions are asked on email, questions are asked what Skype, whatever. ठीक है, at least it is a method of asking the question. The Guru has the prerogative to answer in the same mode, or to say, no, this knowledge is not able to be given on WhatsApp. You come, sit and ask me. The meaning of Upanishad is sitting at the feet of. Upanishad means sitting at the feet of. And it's feet, okay, not head. Because knowledge has to flow downwards like water. Okay, so you have to be sitting at the feet of a Guru to be able to get this knowledge. Okay, because basically grace flows from the feet. That is also by the way. Questions should be asked. No spiritual seeker should take this knowledge with blind faith. It should not be that I say, so you do. Then it is blind faith. But faith should be there. So questions should be asked as many times as it's needed to be asked, but it should be asked to clear your doubts and then accept. It should not be asked to show off your own knowledge or trying to show the class that you know better. It should not be that kind of a question, because that will create ahankar, and ahankar is contrary to your spiritual growth. Everybody knows that. Starting with verse number 54, Arjun is going to ask Bhagwan Krishna 16 questions, not right here, right through the rest of the Bhagavad Gita. Up to 18th chapter, 16 questions Arjun will ask. And every time you might see that some question is getting repeated. Why it's getting repeated? Because still Arjun has not understood. He will ask again, Bhagwan Krishna will patiently reply again. And a proper guru should be able to clear the doubt no matter how many times the Shishya needs to ask that question. As many times as the Shishya needs to ask a question, the Guru must give that answer and clear that sanshay from the student's mind. So, the first question, if you ever want to know what those 16 questions are, I can tell them to you, I can send them to you, but let's not waste the time on what those 16 questions are. I have them right here with me because the beautiful part will start with the question. So let's start with the first verse. We will chant it once again. 54. Arjun Uvacha Sthita Pragyasya Ka Bhasha Samadhisthasya Keshava Sthitadhi Kim Prabhasheta Kimasita Vrajeta Kim. Rina, read.
Arjuna said, Krishna, what are the characteristics of a God-realized soul? Stable of mind and established in samadhi. Perfect tranquility of the mind. How does a man of stable mind speak? How does he sit? How does he walk?
Alright. Arjun wants to know what are the characteristics of a realized person. What are the traits? How will you describe a person who has had Atma Gyan? How will you describe, how will I recognize such a person? How will he speak? How will he sit? And how will he walk? What's the use of asking such a question? How will he sit? And is it important? Is he going to sit straight? Is he going to sit crooked? Is he going to sit relaxed? How will he talk? Loud, short, soft? Sounds like a very dumb question. But let us see, nothing is dumb in Bhagavad Gita. Everything is symbolic. Okay? First and foremost, take the meanings of the words. Ka bhasha. Ka bhasha means what is the description. Sthita pragyasya, of a person with steady intellect. What is the description? Sthita pragyasya, of a person who has a steady intellect. Samadhisthasya, who is established in samadhi. Who is established in samadhi. And sthita dhiya. There are three words over there in that. Sthita pragya, samadhisthasya, and sthita dhiya. Sthita dhiya, enlightened person. So if you take that sentence, it is
the next one. Second.
What is the description of a person with a steady intellect who is established in samadhi and who is an enlightened person? That is the first sentence. Kim prabhashet. How does he talk? How does he talk? Kim asit. How does he sit? Kim vrajet. How does he walk? So as we said in chapter 1, we left Arjun like a dhila wimp, confused, lost, dejected, depressed. Bhagwan Krishna spoke a few verses of chapter 2. And that was enough to transform Arjun from a weak, grief-stricken warrior. That was what we had left him as. And now he is curious. He is interested. And his level of questioning has simply jumped. You remember in chapter 1, he started giving his gyan. Oh, if I fight this war, society will get destroyed, women will be destroyed, vagere vagere, all nonsense he was talking. And suddenly he's asking, what is the characteristic of a sthita pragya? Can you see the jump? So a sad shishya, a person who is totally surrendered to receiving knowledge, a little bit of knowledge from a Sadguru is enough to remove his sanshaya and to allow him to get a quantum leap in the kind of questions or thinking that Arjun is demonstrating here. Relevant question he's asking, and the relevant question is, how will I recognize a enlightened master? How will I recognize? Many of us have a misconception of what a Atma Jnani should be like. And we think that maybe, once you have reached that ultimate state, then the whole day you'll be sitting like that quietly and your mind will be fully in meditation and you'll not be thinking of anything but God. You'll not be able to interact with the world. You might as well go and retire in one cave. And that is the idea we have of, a jnani and all that. So Arjun wants to know, if I follow all the advice that you gave me in chapter 2, then will such a person be able to interact with the world? Will he be of any use to society? Will he be able to be in the world also? Or will he have to retire into Himalayas? So that is why the questions are starting. Bhagwan Krishna will reply to Arjun now in 18 verses. In the next 18 verses, he will describe Sthita Prajna. This is, as I said, the core of the Bhagavad Gita, and you know that the Bhagavad Gita is the core of Mahabharata. So basically these 18 verses are the reason why the entire Mahabharata has been written, okay? So that is the greatest importance of these verses. And 18 is also a very auspicious number in Sanatana Dharma, 18. See, Mahabharata, such a long, it's right now it's long, but before it was even longer. At that time it was called Jaya. Mahabharata, Jai basically, victory. Then it became shorter. From that there is Mahabharata, there is Bhagavad Gita, and in Bhagavad Gita these 18 verses. So you can compare Mahabharata to the cow, Bhagavad Gita to the milk of the cow, and these 18 verses are the ghee that you'll get from that milk, okay? So that is the sar of the entire thing. 18 chapters in Bhagavad Gita, 18 parvas in Mahabharata, 18 Purans, 18 Upapurans, 18 Smritis. This 18 is very auspicious. 18 days the war of Kurukshetra was waged. And 18 survivors they were of the war also. So this 18 again and again is like a leitmotif. It's continuously repeated in all the Shastras. 18 is important. So what makes 18 so important? One of the number 18, one, is Apna Advait Paramatma. One, Paramatma, standing for Paramatma. Advait, non-dual. And Prakruti, as you will see in a later chapter, is made up of 8 tattvas. And from these 8, that one manifests itself as these 8 tattvas. And from these 8 tattvas, the entire millions and millions and millions of forms are created in the world. So all these forms are created from the 8 tattvas. These 8 tattvas are what? Just another form of the one. So the one is actually manifested in each and every individual million forms in that the entire universe is made up of. Okay, so 1 standing for the Paramatma, 8 representing all the million forms that you see in the sansar. If you add the 2, 1 and 8, you get the complete number 9. Okay, and if you go to any, I'm not mathematically inclined, but if you are so, then go and find out the numerological significance of the number 9. Okay, 9 also is very important in Sanatan Dharma, because we have got 9 gateways in this body from which we collect information and from which we also lose ourselves. 9 means 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, 2 ears, like that. Okay. Then Nav Ratnas are also there, 9 jewels. Navratris are also there, where Durga Devi fought the Rakshas. Then what else? Nav Rasas are there. There are 9 moods in art, in painting, in dance. There are Nav Rasas. Then Navagrahas are there. Like that, Kubera has 9 treasures. Many different significances of the number 9. Now the Bhakti is also there. And 9 months it takes to gestate a child and bring that child into the world. So 9, 1, 8, these are all magical numbers, okay?